Hey everybody, welcome to another Car Dealership Guy Industry Spotlight. I'm your host, Sam Dark, COO of the Ziegler Auto Group. And today we've got a CDG first featuring a veteran controller. Check this out. Today we'll uncover a surprising area in the auto dealership where wasted time costs big dollars. We'll find out 4 steps to compliant credit card surcharging, including one thing a 40-year veteran controller wishes everyone in the dealership knew. Today's episode is brought to you by DealerPay. Thanks for sponsoring the show. Joining me today, Jennica Krebsbach, Van Horn Auto Group Controller, and Julie Douglas, President and CEO, DealerPay. Let's get into it. So, Jennica, one of the things that stood out to me right out the gate was how long you've been at Van Horn Auto Group. Almost 40 years. What goes into being at one place for 40 years? And give us a little bit about your evolution over that time into a controller today.
Yeah, so I started when I was in high school.
Me too. I love it. That's awesome.
I was in the business co-op program. So I got out of school every day at noon, which was the cool part, and then worked for the afternoons at the dealership. And so I started as a part-time cashier back in the day when we typed all the car deals by hand and we wrote repair orders with pen. Yeah, a long time ago.
So tell us a little bit about your life as a controller there at Van Horn. What does your typical day look like?
So every day is different, honestly. I have a great team. We have 17 dealerships, 15 rooftops, and all the work comes into my accounting office for centralized accounting. So everything comes here. And just a fabulous team that really does all of the work. And I take the credit for it.
So all the locations flow into your one office.
They do, yes. We have runners, daily shuttles that go in between all the stores and pick up the work. And we also have a scanning system, a scanning tool, DocuWare, that, digitally brings the work into the office as soon as it's finished. And we process the work as it comes in. But everything comes here. My entire team is here with me.
So it's interesting. You think about an auto group, an auto dealership, multiple locations such as yourselves. Each area kind of has its own things that they think about. Sales, finance, service, body shop if you have one. The office kind of is the glue that brings everybody all together and makes sure that there aren't problems. It delivers on the promises everyone else makes. What's one thing after 40 years in this business that you wish more people knew or understood about your area, the controller, the office, the department that sends in the final paperwork, that gets deals licensed? What's one maybe misconception or one thing you wish most people knew?
I would say one of the biggest areas is we're not bad and mean people. The balance sheet, and that's what we do here at all costs. And especially because we are employee owned, we want to make sure everybody is accounting for everything. And we want to try to help them do that. Yes, we are the police in a lot of ways, but we're here to support and train and assist and try to make things more efficient, all for the good of the company.
Yeah. And in fact, it's interesting in our own auto group, I tell our teams, finance and sales and everyone else, you want the office to get aggressive with you because when they're doing that, they're helping to protect you, right, Jennica?
Exactly.
And I do think you're right. The team members that understand that and appreciate that actually end up helping you do a better job than those that kind of fight against it. Because there is kind of a tug and pull, isn't it? Have you seen that over the years?
Oh, for sure. There is. And, some of the employees are easier to work with than the others and understand that we are just here to help.
Yeah. So 40 years in the business, again, that's huge. You've seen technology. You've seen the span of automotive, like the growth. You've seen good times. You've seen bad times. You've seen success. You've seen challenge. You've seen high interest rates. You've seen low interest rates. In your world, how has technology changed your job over the years, over the span of that 40 years?
Like I said earlier, when I think about back when I started, we typed the car deals by hand and everything was carbon copied and you couldn't make a mistake because if you did, you pulled the form out and you restarted it again. Incredible how far we've come and still are growing. There are a lot of things out there I probably don't know how to do that I maybe should. But yeah, it has just evolved. And to think that right now these platforms do everything for us, where before everything was manual, everything.
Do you think there's a way one day we could get one login to everything, though? You think about all the different data sets. Just for fun, Jennica, how many logins do you have in your role as controller for 17, 18 locations?
Oh my gosh. I would say upwards of 30 some, at least. Yeah.
And now since the CDK thing, we all have to figure out how to do double authentication and triple authentication and everything else to keep track of things.
And passwords that are like 24 characters long.
Yes. You need to combine your 3 passwords plus an outrageous number and a bunch of characters at the very end. So we're in a higher interest rate environment. Cash is super important today. How does cash management play into your role?
That actually is one of my daily tasks. And I just finished it before I got on this call with you. Considering we have so many locations and we are consolidated accounting, we switch money back at every second of the day between the stores. And then to balance that, try to keep their floor plan costs as low as we can and utilize the cash we have on hand. It's a big part of my job.
Yeah. And there's many that may not watch it as closely or as well as you do. But before we go into what's one big challenge that you face in the industry, I'd love to ask a little bit about this employee stock ownership plan. What the heck is an ESOP? Everybody hears about how Van Horn is employee owned. What does that mean?
So in 2015, the owner at that time, or the majority owner at that time, Chuck Van Horn, wanted to come up with a succession plan. And he wanted to give back to the employees that helped build the company where it is. In a matter of 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, we grew by 10 stores. We more than doubled at that time in 5 years. And he wanted to give back to the people who brought him where he was. So he sold 30% of the company to the employees. And since then, it's grown. In 2022, it became 100% ESOP. And so the employees own it. We control the profits, the expenses, the bottom line, the coworkers, our happiness. It permeates in everything we do. We stress it. We have ESOP committees. We do events. Every year, we have a large employee ownership event, and our shares and our stock price is revealed, and everybody gets to learn that. And it's usually in October because that's employee month. And we just celebrate it every day. We celebrate it.
So something we say on the Car Dealership Guy podcast all the time is how employees take ownership in this automotive industry. And when they take ownership, they're creative at overcoming big challenges, big problems, which is one of the purposes of this industry spotlight show. How does that ownership change the engagement of your teams? Are they better connected to the why? Because ultimately they are an owner, right? It represents and reflects on them.
Yeah, definitely. We do monthly town hall meetings with every store, and we go over what we did the previous month, what our forecast was. We're very big into forecasting and budgeting and really trying to learn where our numbers are coming from. And we go through those results every month with every dealership, what they did as an individual dealership and what the group did as a whole, and go over our wins and reassess our losses and try to get better the following month. And the employees understand it's something as simple as turning the heat down 1 degree to lower your utility bill. When they are able to see everything that goes into this company, they have a better understanding of how to make it better.
That is cool. Well, so again, going to challenges that we overcome the industry. You recently encountered a challenge that you had to find a solution to. Tell us a little bit about it and how it relates to cash management, credit card payments, check payments, and that sort of thing.
So we had a credit card processor that was wonderful to work with, inefficient, and it was causing some problems at our dealerships because it was taking too long to check the customer out. Every customer that wanted to pay with a credit card, they had to input their name and phone number and email address and then the charge to get it to them, to get the payment link to them, and it was taking a long time for every transaction. And then we also ran into problems with the administrative, transposing numbers or overcharging 30 cents. And then you have that problem where you're going back to the customer like, I'm really sorry, I owe you a quarter. Different simple things like that. So we researched credit card companies that integrated with DealerTrack, our DMS, and to try to find a better solution and make it better for our customers. In the end, that's the important thing. Customer satisfaction is 100% why we're here.
Isn't it interesting too? Something as small as that, like having to take time to enter additional data, time to get something approved or validated, time to reconcile something. You add up those pieces of time across the number of units that you sell and amount of service business you do. And that's the cool thing about automotive too, is you make minor tweaks to things that seem insignificant alone, and they can add up to days, weeks, months, years of time saved. Is that kind of how you looked at it? If you started to add up the time saved, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It definitely is a lot of money. Yeah.
So what was the solution? Who did you find?
I found Julie Douglas with DealerPay, and we connected, did some demos, and we're very impressed. Their customer service is outstanding. Everyone at that company that we talked to, from implementation to the help desk, everybody there is helpful, 100% looking out for us.
So Julie Douglas, welcome. You're president and CEO of DealerPay, and you've had this company for how long? For quite a while.
Yes, I've been in the industry for 25 years, but I was the founder of DealerPay going on 13 years.
Very good. Very good. Is it uncommon for you to see the challenge that Jennica saw, which is time wasted entering additional data, getting approvals, and trying to reconcile payments? I mean, again, seemingly a small thing in the large span, but when you add it all up, it's a significant amount of time.
Yes, we do see it with a lot of dealers. It's also one of those things that dealers who are used to so many manual processes over the years, they may not even know certain automations like this exist. So it is refreshing when we have the opportunity to show them that, for sure.
So talk to us specifically about what that automation is. Jennica set us up for it, but tell us a little bit about how that works.
Sure. So early in my career, I spent a ton of time just listening to issues, situations, whether it be finance managers, service managers, office managers, about areas in their processes of their day that were causing them trouble. They were inefficient, etc. Or even like Jennica mentioned, that we're not providing the best solution for the customer. So we developed a point of sale solution that incorporated a DMS integration to help sort of bridge those gaps and create more efficiencies, which led to more productivity for each of those departments.
Got it. And what would you say, Jennica, if you had to, have you ever sat down and quantified the impact in time savings by implementing their payment solution, DealerPay?
Yeah, I would say it saves at the dealerships alone, probably at least 30 minutes a day reconciling, not to mention what it took to input all that customer data. But then I also have one person on staff who does bank rec for all of the dealerships, and to try and match up the deposit to what the credit card company is paying us, it was time consuming. Hours a day she would spend trying to balance things out. So adding DealerPay was super efficient to our work.
So Jennica, one of the interesting things about our show here is we have a lot of auto dealers. So presidents, CEOs, executive folks that are on this show listening. They listen to it every single week. And it's possible that this process you're talking about, some may not know it intimately, right? Because it's something that you and your staff just do, you deliver on, and because you do it every time, nobody questions it. But explain that process with the bank recs where you're reconciling.
So every morning, the receptionist, the admins at the dealership level will come in and run reports out of DealerPay, which tells them how much money DealerPay is going to give us for that previous day's receipt. They look in Dealer Track and make sure that the receipts they accounted for match DealerPay's. And then they post it in the DMS, in Dealer Track, they post it. So when Kay is doing her bank rec, she sees what came in the bank actually and does a balance what the admin said DealerPay was going to deposit.
Does it usually balance or no?
Now it does, yes.
Yeah.
But
before,
previously,
maybe not so much, right?
Okay. Previously not so much. It was those 25 cents errors, and it was the, this one closed after the batch ran. And, it was very difficult to reconcile.
So Julie, not just in Van Horn, but in your experience in the industry, what are some of the biggest factors that contribute to it not reconciling? Because again, you're off a couple bucks, that'd drive anybody insane, right? And I assume you've got to account for that as a controller. You can't not have it. You can't just say, well, hey, we'll just round it, right? Julie, what are some of the biggest reasons it doesn't match?
Sure. So a lot of it has to do with processing itself, and the payments industry is dynamic, but it's not error proof. So having controls in place to make sure you don't have duplicate transactions, that you don't have failed transactions that don't make the batch, or even, like we mentioned with the DMS integration, since we're pulling that data over, we're also pulling customer. So transposing numbers or making keystroke errors, all of that is basically taken off the table. So accuracy becomes a lot greater when you take out some of those factors. And, it's taken me a lot of years to figure out where the holes are to actually fix them. But, a lot is dependent on, the systems that are in place and, trying to remove as much human error as possible.
So it's interesting in automotive and in my world, we'll have vendors come in with great solutions, they say, and they'll be like, hey, try this. It's a great idea. We can help you raise X dollars. And one of the biggest challenges to any idea isn't the idea itself, it's executing on that idea, right? And my answer a lot of times is, who's going to champion the idea? Who's going to follow it from start to finish? Because, it's terrible, but we've always done it this way. Sometimes even if it's not perfect, is better than trying to upset the apple cart, right? So Jennica, as you went down this road, like it certainly caused some chaos as you went through the transition. And how did you communicate that? How did you and Julie go back and forth to get it right eventually? Because nothing implements perfectly.
No, it sure doesn't. We started with just one of our stores, and we implemented it at one store, a local store that's real close to my office, so that if there were problems, I could be hands-on, or one of my team members could be hands-on to help with anything. And we ran that one store, I think it was 2 months about. Everything was working and integrated everybody else into the system. DealerPay came on site and trained and installed and helped. They took the tour to all of our different dealerships, and it worked great. It really did.
So, Julie, what are some of the biggest challenges you see as you convert? And maybe pay Jennica, like I think Jennica being a 40-year vet, she probably advocated for the group well, right? And saying, hey, this is a problem. We need to find a solution. Not every installation is perfect, right? I think it's tough to find one that ever is.
Sure. So, I mean, we did dial in some details. Like she mentioned, we started with her pilot store. Jennica also does check processing, ACH, and there's other components to payment acceptance besides credit cards. So just dialing in all those specific details, permissions for users, how the DMS interacted. So we were able to really fine tune a lot of that on site with our team.
Tell us a little bit about the check pay piece that you provide. How does that play into this?
So we offer payment acceptance in all forms. So credit card processing, check processing, any kind of back and forth financials are available to go through our system. Check processing, back in the day was antiquated, right? So it was writing a check. What do I do with this? Do I deposit? Do I use a machine to convert it into an electronic transaction? Do I need to guarantee it to prevent loss? So there's a lot of layers to it. It's actually come a long way. And quite frankly, now that credit card surcharging is so popular in the space, we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick of check writers again, believe it or not.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I want to talk about payment processing in just a minute, but when you think about checks, what are some of is fraud an issue right now, and how do you help dealers protect against that? And I only ask that tongue in cheek because we see fraud constantly passing our world.
Yes, it is an issue. It's always going to be some kind of issue. What helps the dealers is them having systems like ours to mitigate it, real time. Just this past year, we implemented a solution called Count, which is an Equifax company that can sort of deter fraud real time. So if there's anomalies or scores that make something look a little risky, I always say if it looks funny or smells funny, we want to make sure to advise that particular dealer user real time. So they have the opportunity to say, hey, yeah, let me actually make a call or something to that effect. And it usually pertains to transactions that don't happen in the dealership. So this would be over the phone transaction, a texted or emailed payment link. And then with respect to check, that's the same situation. Stolen checkbooks, stolen wallets, stolen identities, all those things. So it's huge for a payments company to help their dealerships mitigate that as much as possible. It's never going to be 100% foolproof though.
Yeah. So as you think about fraud in our world today, again, we're seeing a ton of it, attempted fraud. Are there any tips you'd have to dealers, whether on your program or not, as it relates to folks coming in and attempting to use check or credit card fraud. Maybe some tips from your perspective and experience to help avert that.
Sure. So, I mean, the first thing is just make sure you're compliant. Make sure you're using systems that have all those multi-factor authentications that everybody loves. But really, just really be cautious. There's a lot of fraud that we see that's even considered friendly fraud. I had one where someone did a chargeback because they didn't like the way the service manager talked to them. So they didn't feel like they should pay for a repair order. So it really does cross the spectrum. But, dealers that don't have something sort of working for them, as I call automagically, they should really look into it because, you're trying to say, your advisors or your parts managers, your finance people are supposed to be experts in finding it. And that's truly not going to happen. It's not going to help you.
You need to have automatic tools in the background that help to detect it and help sense it and root it out. So are there any interesting examples over the past year or so you've seen of fraud where it's taken an interesting level of creativity to attempt to perpetrate the fraud?
Yeah. I mean, a lot that dealers are losing is just because they haven't followed best practices or have the proper documentation. We're big fans of having a signature on everything. Right. Yeah. So the way we've customized our solutions for the dealers is we provide it to the customer where they're basically authorizing and signing off on it. And that signature is on a repair order, a parts ticket, a deal, a receipt. So if there is a situation or a dispute after the fact, they can quickly come into my system, grab all the documents they need, submit their rebuttal, and their chances of avoiding that loss are a lot greater.
So you bring up that interesting example of somebody not liking a service pro saying, hey, they did the repair. I didn't like the way somebody looked at me. I'm going to reverse that charge with the credit card company. How often is that reversal successful? Like, is the customer
more than you know?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, if you have a signature on that RO and that parts ticket, it's going to be a lot harder for them to say that they didn't agree to the terms because their autograph is on the bottom. So having that documentation is huge. I don't remember the exact study, but we had one where I think 40% of fraud was considered friendly fraud.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's transition into the credit card processing fee piece, because this is fascinating to me. You go to a fast food restaurant or a restaurant today or a bar or whatever, and they've got a credit card processing fee on the ticket when you run a credit card. How common is this in the automotive industry? We're doing it. And what are some of the roadblocks you're seeing? Actually, first, Jennica, do you do that? Do you pass along the processing fee to your customers?
So we just started it January 1st. It's going fine. It really is. And we only do it in the fixed ops departments, service, parts, body shop. We don't do it in the deal world, but it's going fine. I think because it's common in everywhere you go, it kind of implemented it a little better. We fought it for quite a while, trying to be the only car dealership that wasn't doing it. But we implemented it on January 1st.
You add up the dollars and it's significant what
it's amazing
costs to not do it, what it generates to do it. So
exactly.
Julie, what are some of the biggest, as dealer groups and ships think about doing that or not, what are some of the biggest thought processes going around? And what % of dealer groups you work with or out there in the world are doing it from your experience?
Sure. So there's a lot of competitors of mine in the space that offer these solutions on a very simple or standalone fashion. And a lot of them are not even compliant. So first off, I would advise dealers to make sure, they understand what the rules and the regulations are with these systems, because there are certain states that don't allow for surcharging, whereas you have to use an alternative method or cash discounting. So first and foremost is compliance is huge, because there's a ton of secret shoppers out there. And if you get caught, you can get some pretty hefty fines. So that's
what does it mean
first
to
and foremost.
How do you be compliant?
Sure. So you have to display the surcharge on a separate line item. It has to be apparent on your ROs, your parts tickets, your payment receipts. You have to have signage that indicates what percentage you are surcharging in each one of your departments. So there should be no surprises when your customer comes up to pay, that if they choose to use a credit card for traditional surcharging, they may be imposed up to a 3% surcharge. Obviously, they would then have the option option to avoid that by using a debit card, check, or cash. But yeah, it should be very transparent without any surprises. And, to Jenica's point, CSI is the biggest concern our dealers have when they implement this. And believe it or not, if the talk tracks are implemented, like they're teaching, the advisors or the parts managers or the cashiers, how to talk with your customers about this, you're not seeing, a whole lot of change with that, which is the goal. So that's the first part of that question, Sam. The second one is, if you were to ask me a percentage last summer, how many dealers on our plate want to talk about surcharging? It was probably about 65, 70%. I would say since NADA, we're like 90%.
Okay.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of competitors of mine out there that are making a ton of money on it. And, the only thing I could advise dealers is, just make sure you understand how the product works, understand how much I'm making, understand how much you're saving, because there are folks out there that are taking advantage of the system.
So is there anything you want to share with us regard to that structure in terms of who takes what and what to look out for? I mean, what is a poor split or charge for this?
Sure. So dealers should know what their effective rates are, right? So an effective rate is essentially your total fees for payment processing or card processing divided by your volume. So that should be anywhere from 1.95 to 0.35%. Okay. If you peel out debit cards, obviously the credit card rate will be higher because credit card interchange can go up to north of 3%, but that's not an effective rate, right? So they're completely covering their costs if they stay at 3%. I can't mention names, but there's even DMS providers out there that are offering a credit card surcharge north of 3%. Ooh. And telling dealers they can profit off of it. So you technically, after the end of the day, not technically, you absolutely cannot profit off of credit card surcharge.
So a good rate, effective rate is 1.95. It seems. If you're
that's
below,
a great
if you're
effective
1.95,
rate.
you're doing well. If you're above 2, it's 2.5, 3. That's poor and needs
right.
And obviously all the compliance and whatnot stands in the background there. So is there anything else, Julie, that you see in automotive as you work with these other dealers in that payment processing world that keeps you up at night or concerns you or you think about?
I mean, I'm Miss Innovative Julie, so I'm always looking at like the next thing I can do to fix another problem.
Yeah, what's the next thing?
Oh, we're doing some rewards and loyalty. We're doing some payable. So as I mentioned, we're building out the DMS integrations to look at vendors and receivables for dealers just to kind of keep it all together. We are looking at cryptocurrency, believe it or not, and even like a virtual assistant that has a key drop. So there's all kinds of fun options on the plate right now. So I'm excited to see where this is going to go. And, ultimately everything that we develop is solving a problem. So, I like to be the one that for my dealers.
What % of dealers would you say take cryptocurrency in service or in sales?
I can't give you an accurate number yet, but soon enough I will. I will tell you it's large. Yeah, it's largely for, luxury brand vehicles. We've even seen it in other dealer verticals like marine, etc. So I'm excited to jump in and see what it looks like, but I've now had several requests. So we are going to see what this looks like.
We've actually seen problems with crypto, right? You can easily be defrauded if you're not super careful how you take it, how you accept it, and how you process it over time. So
correct.
Jennica, as we get here, how do you see the controller role evolving over the next 5 years or so? So you've been there for 40. What are some of the biggest things that you see coming up in the next 5?
As it continues to boom and fraud continues to escalate, just being on our guard and making sure that what's happening is really what is happening.
Yeah. How do you stay current on all that in your controller role?
A lot of learning, a lot of reading.
Where do you go for that learning?
Well, you get a lot of notifications. We'll get some notifications from the franchises, from our vendors, from DealerPay.
Car Dealers Guy podcast. Come on, I it up. That's I didn't really do it intentionally. So, Jennica, it's interesting, this 40-year history in automotive. And actually, I'd love to ask both you and Julie this, because Julie, you've been in the auto industry for a long time. What advice would you give to people looking to become a controller such as yourself, Jennica, and looking to have the type of career that you've had? What advice would you give?
Obviously, find a really great company and family to work for and work with. I didn't go to college. I learned on the job and had some great mentors here. And I appreciate that and owe my success to them, truly. But if you're happy in what you do, everything else falls in line.
Yeah. It is such a great industry. And it is so interesting because you don't need a university PhD to do great things. You can bring the background, whatever that is, and you can have success. The sky is the limit. There's very little limiting. Julie, what advice would you give to someone maybe thinking, hey, I want to become CEO of a company that serves this auto industry, or I want to create a product that is innovative in solving a problem?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing is you got to be a little different. You got to stand out a little bit. There's a lot of payments companies out there, and even just software in general. I mean, you just got to work on creating the solution to the problem as opposed to just pushing a feature or a benefit. And I found that to be helpful for me. And, listen to your dealers, find out what struggles they're having. And, if you're creative or innovative enough, come up with something to fix it. And that's truly what we've done, what that payment process looks like. Was it secure? Was it, inconvenient? Did I have to wait? Was there a concern? So, I would say just, be different, be big, and don't stop trying.
So, Julie, I'm going to tell you something as we get close to wrapping here that you probably already know. I don't know if you know this, but it's it's getting better, but this industry of automotive is more of a male-dominated industry, right? And it's getting better. It's getting better. I love the fact that we have both of you here, both of you having had long careers, successful careers by every measure. What advice, Julie, would you give to a college graduate, a girl looking to get into this industry and maybe very entrepreneurial minded who wants to create a company like you did in a tough industry, again, very male dominating? Any advice you'd give her?
Well, I mean, yes, very male dominated industry. But the other thing I will tell you, and Jennica's obvious example here is a lot of times I get to work with the women in the office. Yeah. So not all women are in the office. There's plenty of male
There's great
office.
GMs. There's great
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, sometimes you just got to be persistent, not be, discouraged if you aren't taken seriously the first time. And something that I have maybe a small problem with is, just be persistent, don't take no for an answer. It's more like not yet. So
have a voice, be persistent, and just keep going. Because again, sometimes the biggest ceilings are ones we create ourselves and otherwise. Anything you'd say to that, Jennica? Again, given your long career?
I would agree with Julie. Just keep on plugging at it and don't give up. Don't give up. Make sure you're heard because you're just as smart as the other one.
Well, if anyone truly does want to reach out to you for advice on that, Jennica, you're on LinkedIn, I know, and I'm sure folks can DM you. Julie, how could people get a hold of you to either get some advice from you and or learn more about your product?
Sure. I'm also, of course, on LinkedIn and pretty much all the social platforms, but I'm very approachable. I'm very much, available by phone. You call my cell, you can email me, go to DealerPay's website to get in contact with me. But I welcome any calls from, anybody who has questions or interest in my products or services, or even advice like you mentioned last about jumping in this industry.
That's awesome. And there's so much opportunity here. It exists. And Jennica, I'm inspired by Van Horn Auto Group and what you've done with this ESOP. Being able to give employees ownership of that is very cool. And maybe it's the future of automotive a little bit. And, we always talk about at our auto group, the why employees do what they do every single day. I think pay is part of it, but being able to impact change and make a difference in the world, that's another part. And whether you're in the office or you're in the shop or you're in sales or finance or anywhere, driving people around, it's a huge deal to be able to know you make a difference. And so that's pretty neat that you've set that up that way. If anyone wants to come work for Van Horn, Jennica, what would they do?
They would go to vhcars.com careers page and apply. We'd love to have you join the team.
All right. Well, Jennica and Julie, we appreciate having you both on the show today. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.